Chapter 21-25. I opened my eyes, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. My body ached something fierce, and I felt a burning sensation in my chest, like I had put a heavy toll on my magic circuits. You are finally awake, then. I looked up to see Meridia sitting next to my bed. Well, this wasn't my bed, I've been here before, this was the Archmage's quarters. Hey there. I smiled only for her to scowl back at me. I find myself conflicted. She didn't look pleased. Usually if a mortal does something to anger me or disregards my words, I can merely punish them. But what am I supposed to do now? She looked at me expecting an answer to her query. What? I told you to remain whole and healthy before I departed last. Tell me, what part does being bedridden constitute healthy? What happened? My head was pounding as I recalled what I had done. The magical sphere, it was discharging so much magical energy that it became a danger, so I had to divert the flood out of the world line. Oh, the strain on my body, that was particularly painful, and I think I passed out as I finished. Well, since everything is still standing, then I suppose it worked out. But were you worried about me? Her scowl deepened and she looked away. I am a goddess, I do not worry, she said firmly. Would a goddess accept a hug and apology for making her not worry? I sat up on the edge of the bed. Such a thing may make a goddess less angry, she whispered. My legs were still a bit wobbly, but I stood up and wrapped my arms around her, letting her head rest against my chest. I felt her own arms squeeze around me. I'm sorry. Do not think you will escape my ire with just a few words. Of course, I will accept any punishment you give. I chuckled. To make light of my words, you are bold. I can't help it, you're too cute. I gave her a kiss on the forehead. See cute? She whispered. Once again you dare say something so flippantly to me. No mortal has ever had the courage to say such words to my face. She huffed, adorably. Was I also the first one to confess to you as well? I smirked at her. Of course not, I am known far and wide through the realms. I have had kings and great warriors profess their undying love and admiration towards me over the centuries. Many have attempted to woo me with such treasures and gifts that the world would wage war over. And what makes me so special? I lowered my head closer to hers, our lips were just a breath apart. Never had I met a man with such audacity to say they simply like me. She looked a bit bashful. I hummed thoughtfully. Has any man had the audacity to steal a kiss from the goddess Meridia? I stared into her eyes, they glowed slightly with recognition from my words. I think I saw her breathing hitch just ever so slightly. No man has ever dared, she said with nothing more than a whisper. Well, she didn't reject me, so I took that as confirmation. I placed my hand on her cheek, seeing her act almost expectantly like this. Why are you so cute? I pushed my lips against her lightly, letting her dictate how far she wanted to take it. She reciprocated and met mine. This wasn't like before where she just gave a peck on my lips and left. This one was full of affection and perhaps even longing. You conflict me, Wilhelm, she said quietly as our lips separated. I should have been happy to see you possibly die, to escape from the oath I had given to a mortal. I should have demanded answers from you about the odd circumstances you seem to perpetrate. I should not be longing for your presence when we are separated, nor get flustered when I'm finally standing with you. I tilt my head at her words, a bit surprised. I see, I'm actually her first real boyfriend, her first time having a romantic relationship. She doesn't quite know how to act upon her feelings. Regardless of her status as a goddess, she is still a being with emotions, feelings, and some have come to the surface that she isn't used to. Even if the time had been short, it didn't seem to mitigate all these suppressed feelings suddenly rearing their head. Or maybe it was something a bit more than that. You've been by yourself all this time, haven't you? I gently pushed a strand of hair out of her face. She paused, staring at me. I don't think she quite knew how to answer that question, only giving a cute little sound in confirmation. Well, I'm not going to let you be alone anymore. I smiled at her. You're my woman after all, and I don't want to be alone anymore either. Maybe that's why we both were so taken with each other. We were both lonely. I suppose it can't be helped then, she said quietly. But do you truly wish to pursue this courtship? Are you asking me this now? I think I made my feelings quite clear. I'm not a mortal. There are things I won't be able to give you that someone of your own kind can. Are you not capable of love? I lightly poked her cheek, much to her chagrin. Of course, I am. She gave a little squeak of embarrassment. I think she was feeling much more comfortable in my presence now. I guess we had been floating around what our relationship truly was until this moment, and she finally accepted it in her own heart. Then what's the issue? I can't give you children, she said plainly. Is it not the desire for mortals to carry on their own lines with offspring? I guess that is something important to people who live in a world like this. It's true, I guess I even had thoughts about a big family in my future. But, I care more about you than something like that. I don't. She paused, having trouble finding the words. I will not get angry if you find a mortal to produce offspring with. I just blinked, trying to process what she said. I think this was perhaps a sore point for her and something she may have had on her mind for a bit now. I'll deal with it later. Can you say those words to me again like our first meeting? She leaned into me. I like you, Meridia. I whispered gently into her ear. I like you too, Wilhelm. She replied. I see Lady Meridia has finally departed. The Archmage popped in only moments after Meridia had left. Sorry, I said sheepishly. No doubt she pretty much took over the area while she was here. He pursed his lips. Well, I can't quite fault her, you gave several of us quite the scare. His lips curled upwards. I dare say even Lady Meridia did not leave your side for the entire 2 days you were unconscious. Crash. We both looked over at the origin of the noise. My dawnbreaker was sitting on a shelf, now cleared of any other items, that had just so happened to fall onto the floor. I couldn't help but smile, knowing she probably got all flustered at his comment. She really was cute when that side of her came out. The Archmage wisely chose to ignore it. The phenomenon that occurred, I think all of Skyrim saw it. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I rubbed the back of my head. What happened to the orb? You mean the Eye of Magnus? I was going to ask you that question. He looked at me with a thoughtful expression. All we had to go on were some very ancient tomes in the tomb that described the artifact in question, and they called it the Eye of Magnus. Sorry, I don't have a clue. I shrugged. I think I passed out trying to stop it from either exploding or sucking up all the magicka in the world. Or maybe it was doing neither and I overreacted. Well, the world is still spinning, and no one died. It seems you were successful in your endeavors. Well done, Wilhelm. He was only being slightly sarcastic. I just snorted. Well, there was another party there, they called themselves the Psijic Order. The Archmage finished for me. I had one of them visit me and try to request my aid in apprehending you. Oh. I don't suppose you know who the Psijic Order are? I don't. I guess you could call them an ancient order of mystics. They generally don't interfere in the world's affairs, usually only keeping dangerous things away from those who would misuse them. He rubbed his beard. I was excited when one popped into the college for the first time in 100 years. They actually would give counsel to previous archmages before they went into hiding. He's here right now. I scowled. Well, if he wants a round too. No, I kicked him out when he didn't seem to see a problem with attacking one of my students without proper justification other than ruining everything. He sneered, but quickly recovered. Remember this, Wilhelm, you are a part of this college, and you will have my support. He pat my shoulder. Unless you try to destroy the world, then we may have a problem. I let out a small laugh. Thank you, for helping me with everything. It was genuine thanks as well, he had been constantly giving me support since I arrived. He nodded. With that being said, you should know that you have drawn quite a bit of attention. I have no doubt that Encano has already sent word to the Thalmor, and while I can deny them at the college, they will most likely try something when you are out and about. Him again. I frowned. Well, if they wish to start a conflict with me, they best be prepared. Quite. He smirked. But don't be arrogant. He lightly flicked my forehead. For all their hot air, the Thalmor are very accomplished in magic. Don't give them a chance to overwhelm you. He waved his hand, fixing everything that had fallen to the floor earlier. Well then, I have satiated my curiosity. And it's such a shame you don't possess the Eye of Magnus, because I just so happen to know where another artifact bearing the name of Magnus dwells. He nodded to himself. Indeed, it is a shame, for I believe they would complement each other wonderfully. Too bad, for I guess the staff of Magnus will forever dwell within the ruins of Labyrinthian, guarded by very power entities that one should not venture into with proper concern and preparations. He gave me one last wink before teleporting away. He was laying it on pretty thick there, but I don't actually have this Eye of Magnus. About that. Hey Drake. So, I guess it's my turn now. Something you want to tell me? I may have grabbed the eye and took it inside the boosted gear. I just blinked, letting the words process for a moment. Oh. Yeah, so it's here if you want to do something with it. I'm kinda just keeping it segregated in a corner. Huh, well, since I have it then, I do have an idea of what to do with it. So, did Meridia really watch over me for 2 days? Oh yes, she was fussing all over you. It was amusing to see this goddess act like a blushing schoolgirl. Wow. It's impressive how quickly you managed to steal her heart. I told you before, I got game. I think it had more to do with her being lonely and you giving the first genuine confession she's ever received. That's a fair point. Wait, since when could you take things into the boosted gear? While I wasn't bedridden anymore, I still didn't adventure out of the college for another couple days, just deciding to take it easy and do some studying. I was also pleased to find out that the college did in fact have a dining area. Actually, the college had a lot of things I didn't know about until now. It took me sitting down to realize I had been bouncing all around the place without resting. I'm certainly not against being on the move and with a purpose, but it's good to sit down and reflect sometimes. My only purpose right now was to just get as strong as possible. I did not like the feeling of weakness, being unable to choose my own paths in life, having to actually avoid certain foes because of their power. What could I do if a dragon pops up right now? It ashamed me to admit, not much. Well, not much without sacrificing myself, either crippling my potential or just outright giving a last hurrah. Wilhelm, just the person I was looking for. I turned around and saw Entur walking towards me. Entur, you look like you bring good news. I do. But first it's good to see you up and about. The whole college is in a tizzy about what happened. He slid into a chair at my table. I have a few friends that are particularly interested. I see, and I'm sure these interested parties have been most generous with their patronage in the past. I lightly tapped my fingers on the table, studying his expression. Oh yes, most generous. One might even call them repeat customers. He held back a toothy smile. And no doubt they would pay quite a sum for information of such an unnatural phenomenon. Who knows? He smirked at me. Well, I suppose I could say a few things, from one friend to another. He's being very overt in asking me for information. I prefer this than trying to pick apart my words or trying to subtly get me to say things by accident. It seems there was a magical artifact that would absorb magicka non-stop in the depths. I was able to discharge all the stored power safely, but I don't know what happened to the artifact after that. Not much different than the official reports then. He sighed. Well, I have one little bit of information that was left out. I leaned in. The Psijic order made an appearance. His eyes widened, mouth opened about to say something then closed. That is a very valuable piece of information. Indeed, I'm sure you will be able to report back to your very generous patrons with good news. Yeah, go fuck yourself, Psijic order. He nodded vigorously. I do have more business with you though. He reached into a bag he was carrying on his back and took out a wooden box, placing it on the table. I am man who can get things. He boasted, removing the lid. There laid a sword, made of a familiar blue glass. Its name is Chilrend. How beautiful. I ran my finger across the surface, it was exactly the same as the sample the Archmage gave me. Where did you find it? I doubt the excited look on my face was missed by him, but I was too happy to finally have this here. Well. He looked around, and I wasn't quite sure why the dining area was rarely ever occupied, people were always busy, never having time to sit down here and waste time. You've heard about Rift 10, yes? I did, dragon attack, nasty thing. I nodded along, I did feel sympathy for those people at Rift 10. Yes, but did you know the Thieves Guild is based in Rift 10? He whispered. I did not. Actually, I barely knew anything about the Thieves Guild, really only their name referenced once or twice in a book. Well, you didn't hear this from me, but their previous leader had put his hands on the guild's treasure. This only came out due to the aftermath of the dragon attack. One thing led to another, and a new master took his place. I hear she's been picking apart all of his possessions, trying to sell them away to refill the guild coffers. And this was one of his. I eyed the weapon. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. He gave an exaggerated shrug. I see, And what is this costing me? Well, considering how much the gems and the axe sold for, you would owe me a little over 1,000 septims, but why don't I just make it an even trade? He gave me a smirk. Call it the friend discount. I believe this has been a mutually beneficial relationship, and I look forward to your services for any future endeavors. I held out my hand, sharing the same smiling as him. He grabbed it, giving it a shake. Yes, it has been most rewarding. With that he got up and left the room. I lifted the sword out of the box, putting it eye level, getting a feel for the weight. A light swing and it left behind a chilly mist in its wake. It's beautiful, right? I asked, turning my head, eyeing Meridia sitting at the table. She had been appearing more often lately, even if it was only for a few moments. Not that I'm complaining, I just hope she wasn't disregarding anything important to come see me. These past 2 days she had popped in probably half a dozen times to merely exchange a few words before departing again. My sword is better. She gave a small grunt. Of course. I replied without a second thought. Dawnbreaker is also much more powerful, you made it after all. Flattery will get you nowhere. She said, but her happy expression betrayed her words. I put the sword back away and put it all in my ring. Would you like to go for a walk? I offered my hand. I would like that. She stood up, taking my hand. I took her out of the dining area, through the May halls that housed a large font of Magica and out to the courtyard. I suppose you don't get much of a chance to walk among mortals. I never had a reason to before. She sniffed. It generally caused more of a ruckus when I appeared in the past before my followers. I learned to keep my dealings more impersonal. She admired the view, peering over one of the ledges. But I suppose there is a certain satisfaction, walking through Nirn with my own feet. You know, you don't have to always be the one coming to see me. I gave her hand a little squeeze, and a small smile. She paused and looked at me. Are you referring to how you were able to connect to my realm of oblivion without my permission? She raised an eyebrow. Whatever could you be talking about? I looked at her in mock confusion written all over my face. Of course. She pursed her lips. I may know a thing or two, perhaps I could even be susceptible to a bribe. A bribe is it? Am I to assume the nature of this bribe involves my legs in some manner? She eyed me suspiciously. I can neither confirm nor deny that your magnificent legs might play a part in loosening my lips. I gave her a smirk. Admittedly, this is not what I expected you to request. I looked up, staring into her Meridia's beautiful eyes as my head rested on her lap. Oh, what did you expect? Please give a very detailed explanation. I won't fall for your games. She huffed cutely. To find out that my man is a deviant. I couldn't help but laugh a little. So, I'm your man now. Is there any need to deny it? She looked away with an ever so slight blush on her cheeks. So cute, it was too much and I gave her thigh a little squeeze. She gave a small yelp in surprise, looking back down at me and huffing again. Is it about time to uphold your end of the bargain? She crossed her arms. It's called the Kaleidoscope, a magic that allows me some manner of control over space and dimensions. Which was true. I've never heard of such a thing. She looked at me thoughtfully. How many people know about this magic of yours? Just me and my grandfather. I guess I'll just refer to my previous self as grandfather for now, makes it less complicated. Kischer Zelrich Schweinorg, I briefly wondered about him then pushed such thoughts aside, I was more focused on the beautiful woman whose lap I now occupied. Perhaps that is for the best, the method in which you tore into my realm, I do not wish for it to be widespread. I shudder to think what would occur if one of the others could make use of such a method and possibly enter Nirn fully. I finally sat up, adjusting myself next to her. You know, I wasn't joking when I said I could come to you as well. You would venture into my realm of oblivion? She looked at me incredulously. I am not lessened there like I am here. I could do anything to you I desired. Anything, huh? I raised an eyebrow. As long as you're gentle about it. It would be my first time after all. That isn't what I meant. She puffed up. Truly, your mind is only filled with perversions. I blame the goddess who seduced me. I wiggled my eyebrows for extra effect. I did not seduce you. She huffed out with exasperation. I still remember that beautiful woman beckoning me, displaying her legs in all their glory, offering me anything I wished with that come hither look. I gently ran my hand down her leg. I looked up into her eyes, they were not unwelcoming but also a bit hesitant. If I wanted to push I probably could, but it didn't feel right. Instead, I leaned over and placed my lips against hers. She was the one who broke the kiss, reluctance was written all over her face. Will. Ah, is it time already? She probably had to head back. I must return. I could feel the hint of sadness she gave off. I see. I stood up, taking her hands into mine as she followed. I'll miss you. I gave her a reassuring smile. Your absence will be noticeable. She replied, trying ever so hard to keep her expression neutral. Gods, it was so adorable when she acted like this. I guess some things were still difficult for her to say out loud. I briefly wondered what would happen if I pinched her cheeks, but I didn't want to ruin the mood. She looked down at our hands then back up to me. I wouldn't be remiss if you found yourself in my realm. She said quietly, disappearing back into oblivion. But I saw that small rosy complexion on her cheeks. That woman, how can she be so cute and so scarily powerful at the same time? I just want to bully her a bit and see her reactions. Well, she probably would be able to step away again for a few days, at least. I may as well head to Whiterun and see if I can finally get this sword made now that I have all the pieces. I casually strode through the entrance of Whiterun. It was about midday, the sun was high in the air and the temperature was actually very comfortable. I had flown all the way down from Winterhold, something I was a bit hesitant to do because of the laws surrounding flight. For some reason they outlawed flight-based magics pretty much over the entire empire, yet allowed various forms of teleportation. Bugger if I know why, I just didn't want someone to spot me and get in trouble just because I was being impatient. And that wasn't even considering my wings, it was usually just a good idea to not do it unless an emergency. Well, I saw Nkano skulking around and decided to head off that little annoyance and just sneak out and fly away from the college without any notice. I did land a bit away from the city and walked the little distance in between. It was a nice little trip, minus the giant fucking rat that tried to attack me. Creepy little bugger got blown the fuck up, but otherwise it was relaxing. I waved to the guards who gave me a nod. I don't know if it was the same ones, but they seemed friendly enough. Maybe it was and they noticed my clothing. I guess I'm rather memorable when most people wear robes and animal skins. What a lovely day it was, I was in a great mood. I had a wonderful woman that returned my affections, I was going to see a friend I hadn't seen in a few days, and I was finally going to get my mystic code made. I put a few coins on a stall with some fresh produce up for sale, grabbing a couple apples with a wink towards the woman running it. Skyrim apples are really good, they tasted like a Honeycrisps, if slightly sweeter. I wonder if I could grow some at home. Maybe open the market for a new kind of apple, build an apple empire, become the tyrant of produce. That sounds like too much work. Though I wouldn't mind a tree or two for my own enjoyment. These would probably be even better if they were chilled, cold fruit is the way to go. I walked up to the, what was it called again, Jorvasker, the companions building. The boat building. Thoram, think fast, I shouted, as I opened the door spotting my friend, and tossing him an apple. He was sitting at a table, holding what looked like some ice to his head. He barely even looked at he caught the apple, before taking a confused look. Will. He greeted me happily. There were a few others in the building, but it seemed rather quiet overall. Heya. I sat down next to him. You look, not too good. I took a bit of a hit on the noggin in the last mission. He flexed his hand and the ice disappeared. Thoram. Did you learn magic? I was genuinely surprised. He smiled bright. I took your advice and picked up a few books at the market. Well done. I was impressed. What have you learned? I took another bite of my apple. Just frostbite and flames. He replied. I tried the basic healing spell, but I've been having trouble with it. I'm officially in charge of chilling all the mead now. He gave a good-natured laugh. Well, that is a good use of magic. Tell me, what happened to you? I cast my own healing spell on him. Farengar, the Jarl's court wizard, paid for the companions to seek out a tablet from the Bleak Falls Barrow. Bleak Falls Barrow, where have I heard that name before? It's the ancient ruins between Whiterun and Helgen. Ah, I remember seeing it on a map now. Lots of Draugr I presume. They were many, but the companions couldn't be stopped by a few undead. He said with pride. It wasn't until we met Deathlord at the end that we finally met a worthy opponent. Even in undeath, the masters of the Thursday are not to be trifled with. I've run into one of those. A necromancer raised one under Meridia's statue when I took that job. You fought one by yourself. Thoram clasped my shoulder. My friend, that was mighty dangerous of you. It worked out. I waved him off. What about you? The companions fought hard. With our teamwork we managed to subdue the undead. I merely got clipped by one of its shouts. He looked a little sheepish. But we returned with the tablet, something to do about the dragons that the court wizard is using to study. How was the loot? Both times I've delved into an old tomb or temple I've gotten a lot of good stuff. A few enchanted weapons and some treasure. Should last the companions several months if rationed well. He brushed off his apple before taking a bite. What brings you around Whiterun again, my friend? I finally got all the stuff to make my magical foci, I just need a good smith to help me forge it. Ireland Greymane is at the forge right now, and I think you're in luck, he doesn't have any large commissions. I stood up from my seat quickly. As always Thoram, you are the best. I pat him on the shoulder as I head out the back doors towards the forge. What do you want, boy? The old smith looked at me as I walked up the steps towards the supposed Sky Forge. I've only heard a few things about this forge, supposed to make really good steel weapons, good enough that they have their own name to differentiate them. As one would assume, Skyforge Steel. Well, I was hoping you'd be willing to take on a very specific commission for me. What ya need? He didn't look too interested, barely sparing my a glance. A magical foci in the shape of a sword. He paused his working and turned to face me. Do I look like a mage, boy? I don't need you to be a mage, I need you to do the forging, I can do all the magical aspects. He let out a snort. You want me to work around you, then? He raised an eyebrow. I don't just let anyone into my forge when I'm working. 2,000 septims. I just threw out my savings. Once again he just paused and blinked at me. Explain to me what it is you actually need. I'll do you one better. I withdrew a few pieces of parchment from my ring. Just because I had been resting a few days, didn't mean I lazed around. These are the schematics. I rolled them out on the nearby table. He dropped the hammer and pliers in his hand and walked over, flattening the rolled pages and getting a good look. This is mad. He finally said. Can you not do it? I challenged. You want the blade part to be made of glass. Not just any glass. I took out Chillrend and the small chunk I had stored. What is? He picked up the sword. I don't think I've ever heard of glass like this. He admired the weapon. And you want me to reforge this? Yup. I said with a gleeful smile. It's a pity, this sword is beautiful. He sighed, setting it down. You're lucky lad, not many Nords can work with glass like I can. But the other stuff, you must be mad if you think this will work. You want the handle made out of ebony, with orichalcum enamel and what looks like moonstone running inside all the way to the blade from the base of the hilt, and there is a little spherical section at the base where something should go, an ornament of sorts. Can you do it? Son, this is the most ridiculous sword I've ever seen, and I'm now too curious to see how it turns out. Well, the pride of a blacksmith is an interesting thing. And I'm sure a couple thousand septims doesn't hurt. The money is well worth it. He nodded without a second thought. I'm going to have to smelt this sword down first, and this glass isn't what I'm more used to, it may take some trial and error. I took off my vest, and unbuttoned my shirt, and rolled up my sleeves. I'm here to assist. You ever assist in smithing, son? I know a thing or two. I smirked. I'll get on the bellows, tell me when the temperature is good. Alright, it's your money and materials, don't be crying to me when something goes wrong. He shrugged. Hold it, this glass is damn finicky, any higher and it'll shatter. Fuck, this wood is burning too quick, I'll throw some frost magic at it. Steady. It's melting good now. Good, slowly lower the temperature. Did you not see my drawing? The moonstone needs to be inlaid at the base of the glass. I'm telling you, the glass will get too brittle if you try to add the moonstone after it fully settles. Then how the hells are you going to cast the ebony and orichalcum over top if you do the moonstone first? Brat, I've been doing this before your mother even thought about conceiving you. Moonstone has a higher melting point due to its purer magic nature, we can put a mold of the ebony on after we get this bit in first. Alright, fine, you're the expert. Hold it steady, boy. I don't need you fucking it up at the last part. Just pour the orichalcum in, old man, make sure you mix some more of my blood in. First line is done, second line is done, and there's the last one. So, get ready to quench, now. Amazing. I blurted out as Ireland put the finishing touches on my weapon. He held it in a pair of tongs, the steam still coming from the cooled metal. Carefully, he set down to fully cool off. This turned out well, he admired his work. Explain to me how this works. Ebony rejects magicka, so it gets all funneled into orichalcum. Orichalcum eats up all the magical energy, but doesn't like letting it go, so the moonstone takes it and carries it to the glass blade which can be used for spells. I listed off my thoughts on its creation. I couldn't just use the orichalcum for the handle, if I had too much orichalcum then my magical energy would never be pushed off into the moonstone to the glass. And any other metal would take magical energy into it, essentially wasting the runoff, whereas ebony is both extremely durable and doesn't want my magical energy. And moonstone suffers from being too weak a material for a more physical use. A good hit on the handle and it would have been damaged. The glass itself was stronger than steel and took in magical energy like it was starving, but it would be dangerous to make the entire thing out of pure glass. I needed to separate the part that handles spellcasting from what I was holding. But there's one last material to add. Right, Drake? You want this now? Yeah, I'm ready for it. I summoned my boosted gear, earning a look from the blacksmith, but I ignored it for now. It came out without any fanfare, no huge world-changing events. The Eye of Magnus. It was just a small little orb in the palm of my hand, smaller than even a gold coin. And that wasn't because of the excess magicka I drained from it. This thing was still going strong, just less volatile. No, the size was completely irrelevant. Its physical form didn't truly exist, it was an exertion into this plane of existence, and it was how we perceived it. I could therefore shrink it down to something manageable. Carefully, I inserted the eye into the base of the pommel, a small opening that allowed it to click into place. My sword hummed as the eye filled the entire thing with power. I picked up my finished sword, giving it a careful swing. With another swing, I pulled upon the kaleidoscope and filled it with the dimensional energies as it lit up in a rainbow light. For some reason the glass retained that chill, like fog every time I swung, the light let off a sort of afterimage because of the cold air. The weapon needs a name. Ireland spoke up. It's too good a work of mine to be nameless. Well, I thought of name immediately. Mirage. I wasn't giggling to myself like a child, regardless of what Drake would say. I was merely appreciating my amazing new sword. Mirage. I repeated the name several times in my head as I swung the sword about. The afterimage that blurred every time it cut through the air just made it all the more beautiful. My instinct was telling me that this sword would be able to fully handle the might of my magic. The addition of the Eye of Magus, well, I would even put it on par with my old jeweled sword. Maybe slightly different in application, but to compare them side by side, I don't think mine would lose out. Truthfully, I felt more whole than I had since my memories had surfaced. The feeling that I'm no longer constrained. I had to stop myself from thoroughly testing this thing here and now. I was getting some looks as I swung it around near the blacksmith area. One of the things I did in the immediate time frame was sort of program my calculations into my sword. The Eye of Magus was many things, some which I had yet to still decipher, but it was more than capable of acting as a sort of magical computer to process what I needed and help along my magic. Perhaps its nature as a higher dimensional object had led to its ability of synchronize with those aspects of the kaleidoscope. Not just that, the sword itself was powered to an impressive level with the inclusion of the eye in the hilt. There was also the side benefit of being able to draw in magical energy faster than I could with my old jeweled sword, though further testing was required. It really felt good to complete this thing after working towards it for about a bit now. A thought did cross my mind, I really need to brush up on my swordsmanship. Since I'll probably be using my sword as an actual sword, it would be better to perhaps find a teacher somewhere. Now though, I'm kinda at a loss on what to do. Well, there's always that one place that the Archmage told me about. I wouldn't mind picking up another ridiculously powerful object. I did find a map of where the ruins were when I was bored the other day, and I really wanted to get some practice in with this thing. With a shrug, I slashed open in front of me as the immediate air distorted and a vibrant display of colors formed a portal. I'm back, baby. As I reaffirmed my spot on the world line and re-entered the normal flow of the world, the view came forward and the cold air once more hit my face. Roar. A familiar sound vibrated in front of me as I apparently appeared right into the nests of a few trolls. Well, I did want some test subjects. I was curious about the combat applications of my weapon. I pulled on the kaleidoscope, and I felt a weird sensation vibrate from the eye. I had felt it previously, but I was in no position to test it. Here though, it looks like these trolls were volunteering. How considerate. They were dozens of feet away and I swung Mirage with a slow overhead slash. The space in front of me distorted. No, that isn't quite right. The space was fine, it didn't shatter nor break in any way. It's more like, what did they call this in the East, sword phantom? Attaching your intent on your blade and releasing it in a slash to extend the range. I was sort of doing something like that, but with magical energy apparently. I think the eye was doing it somehow. Oh, I see now. I think the eye can't exist in multiple realities simultaneously when all connected, therefore when I attempt to use something like the dimensional refraction phenomenon, there is a sort of physical reaction where the magical energy generated is amplified and then kind of solidified onto the sword. To pull on magical energy from multiple realities, my sword has to simultaneously exist within those realities at the same time. I don't just open a portal and let my sword drink its fill. That would require too much time. My sword acts as a nexus bridging and overlapping between how many worlds I wish to pull from and to gather the required amount without harming the native dimensions. It was one of the reasons I need a foci to perform this feat. While I could technically do so without my sword, my body would explode pretty quickly. Even using this method, it can be very straining on my body. The amount my previous self had to pull on to push back the moon was a good indicator of this. His body never recovered even though he's practically immortal. The eye essentially sees itself even though only one exists, and thus tries to pull on its own magical energy, creating this effect. Basically, I can cheat and use this to my advantage. There is no true harm done, just something I need to take into consideration for the future. I'm reminded of that one heroic spirit that used a sword technique to mimic magic. And here I am using magic to mimic a sword technique. Needless to say, the troll was bisected with ease. There were two more and I was suddenly filled with inspiration. That heroic spirit, he used the dimensional refraction phenomenon to attack 3 times in a single breath. I have true access to the kaleidoscope, couldn't I figure out something similar? Granted, I don't have the confidence to claim his skills with a sword, but I would dare anyone to say my magic doesn't reach the standard. I mentally began to run some calculations in my head as another troll roared and charged towards me with its lanky body. I relaxed my own body, taking Mirage with 2 hands and going into a loose stance. When it got close enough, I simply moved to stab it through the chest, and as its clawed hand swung down, my sword pierced its heart, but I was also behind it, stabbing it through the back. I felt a pulling sensation and a sudden stifling feeling as I walked a few feet away from the now dead troll. It wasn't exactly painful, but not something pleasant to feel either. Perhaps I'm just not used to the sensation. I was in 2 places at once as I both stabbed the troll from the front and back. Neither were me, yet both of them were true until my own presence was reaffirmed and realigned unto the world. What a strange feeling. Is this how that heroic spirit felt when he uses his technique? It seemed like a success on the surface. My body was a little stiff, though nothing beyond that, but I think I just need to train it more. I waved my sword casually to the side, cutting the head off the last troll as it got close. The power behind the accumulated energy was impressive even after seeing it once more. What should I call this technique? I suppose I should pay homage to my inspiration. What did that guy call his own attack? Tsubame Geishi, the swallow reversal. If I remember correctly, he made a cage of 3 sword strikes, whereas I attacked twice, once from the front and once from the back. I'll call it swallow returns to pay homage. Well, if I'm playing off the theme, I may as well all my flying slash in the same way as well. 1 slash, 1 bird. I should be able to actualize more with further training. I looked towards a nearby cliff. 2 birds, I said as I swung forward, and 2 more magical sword phantoms flew off and cleaved a chunk out of the rock. Overlaying multiple swings using the kaleidoscope, I could perform this technique multiple times to truly copy those Eastern sword skills that were lost to time. Well, I was never good at naming things, but this should do for now. It still took a bit of concentration to pull these moves off. Maybe attaching a trigger word and calling out their names would help. I could certainly hypnotize myself to streamline the whole thing. Arius existed for a reason. A trigger phrase often helped one focus even without resorting to hypnotizing on yourself. Especially when belief was such a crucial element in any spellcasting. I should put all that on hold for the moment. I don't want to get sidetracked. Gods know I do easily. Now where's that entrance? Fuck, this place was confusing. I must have run around for 20 minutes trying to find the entrance. These big stone doors were surprisingly difficult to find. Oh, how cute, it's magically locked. I put my hand on the door that didn't have any key. Boop. With a thought I appeared on the other side, only having to cast a structural grasp to see how far the stone door extended so I could know the distance I had to teleport from. As I took a few steps inside the large chamber, it began to rumble and shake. There were large bones in the area that were lifted up off the ground, all shooting towards the center of the area as they combined into a large, familiar shape. Is that a fucking skeleton dragon? I couldn't help but blurt out. It was decently large and a bit intimidating. Except, it was a skeleton. If it were a zombie, I may be a bit more alarmed, but it was literally just bones that were reanimated and forced into the figure of a dragon. I drew Dawnbreaker from my ring and with telekinesis guiding it, I threw the blade at the undead. Easily piercing through the necromantic magics holding the thing together as a burst of white light flared up and exploded outwards. I pulled the sword back to me, looking at it. How was that? I just slayed a dragon, your man is amazing, right? I spoke to the sword. There was no response, clearly, she was too awestruck at my mighty figure. On a side note, free dragon bones. These are mine now. Wamaze what I vuljuner. I stopped looking around as I felt something shudder around me. It sounded like someone just spoke. Projecting their voice from far away. Hell, the magical energy in the surroundings were completely drained just from the pressure. It says a lot that I couldn't understand whatever language was spoken, even though I can technically speak any language due to my devil heritage. It sounded somewhat similar to those shouts the Draugr used on me. Was this thing speaking in dragon? Was there a dragon here? Such a thought did give me pause, but at the same time I dismissed the idea. The Archmage had apparently been here before, I doubt he wouldn't have warned me of a dragon. Though he did say there were some extraordinary foes here. I best be on my guard. Niverian Muzfan Siv Nidas Het. Again, the voice sounded out and the magical energy in the air stirred, in fact, it felt like it tried to drain my mana. No. I felt the origin of the voice and used it as a reference and sliced open a portal. I opened my eyes to find myself in a new chamber. There was a strange magical phenomenon in here. It looked like two ghosts were channeling a spell to keep an undead mage in stasis. Weird. I took a closer look at the undead mage, it was holding something that made my hair stand up on my arms. That was definitely not a normal staff, it even had similar markings as the Eye of Magnus. Is this the staff of Magnus or something? If someone else were here, they would probably have to release the undead if they wanted to claim the staff, well unlucky for them. A mere stasis spell. Pfft, I could get around this in my diapers. I withdrew Mirage and sliced through the little bubble, cutting off the zombie's hand holding the staff and pulling it out, all without disturbing the quaint little spell. So much power I felt swell up inside me. If the eye channeled infinite magical energy, this staff was one big amplifier. No wonder the Archmage said these would complement one another. Though a normal person would probably burn themselves inside and out trying to use them in tandem. I, myself, had to be careful until I could test these further. Better stash this away for now in my ring. Now that I think about it, why didn't he want to come get it for himself? I didn't really think he was planning anything nefarious, my instincts told me he was being sincere in all our dealings, and I usually trusted my gut on such things. Well, I guess I won't find out unless I asked him. Nothing else I need here. I just tossed the little zombie hand to the side and teleported away. I popped over in Whiterun again, just finding a back alley to not draw attention. I felt like I left a bit abruptly after finishing my sword and I wanted to check back in with Thoram and show it off if I was being honest. I wonder if he would know anyone who was a good sword trainer. I wouldn't call myself a novice, but I was in no way a master. Even if the previous me was a master, which he wasn't, these kinds of things need to be physically built up, things like muscle memory and instinct thoroughly trained through combat. But until then I had a few more thoughts regarding my magecraft, specifically towards my application of runes. I had 3 spells so far that I considered mine. Bindings of Gaia, using the earth to bind the target with roots/vines. It corresponded to Midgard in the Norse mythology. Fires of Muspelheim, exactly as it sounds, intense fire that basically goes, fuck everything in that direction. And the third one was Freezing Winds of Jotunheim, that produced a cascading freezing wind that emanated out from my position. This wasn't just to stay on a certain theme either, 3 spells so far that correspond to 3 of the Norse mythology's 9 realms. Once I completed them, there should be a noticeable increase in their abilities as I'm borrowing the weight of an entire worldview. There was a reason that mages tend to name things under godly domains or corresponding to certain figures when applicable. The concepts still existed and could be tapped into, as diminished as they were in the current era. There was a downside as well, they would then also be open to weaknesses that come with their borrowed identity. If I were to say, fight someone with a lineage that could be traced back to the Jotun, or giants, of Jotunheim, my freezing spell would have little to no effect even if you discounted any immunities that the individual possessed inherently. Conceptually, why would a Jotun be frozen by Jotunheim cold? That is one of the essences of mystery. It takes on a completely different form of logic than the human perception that is prevalent today. But I digress, I had a few more thoughts on some more spells. A shield based on Asgard was one of my new choices. I was lacking in the defense department. Maybe I should wait until I head back to my home reality before I complete these. I think I would be able to find better reference material there. I was lost in my own thoughts, but something stood out enough in the streets to give me pause. Where was everyone? I've only been gone a few hours, not even 5 by my count, yet there was no one here. Oi, you, what are you doing outside? I turned the corner, immediately shouting at me. What? I was preoccupied for a few hours and I just came out. What's wrong? Did you not hear, you daft boy? A dragon attacked the western watchtower. Most of the guards are already over there fighting it. Even the companions moved out. He exclaimed. The companions, all of them. That means, Thoram is out there fighting a goddamn dragon. Even the Jarl's personal guard is out there. He shook his head. Hurry and get somewhere inside, if it comes over here. I'm a mage, I can help. He paused for a moment, barely even giving the time to think. Fine, alright. There's another group to reinforce them about to head out, follow me. He hurriedly waved his hand over. There were probably less than 20 overall. I had no idea how long they had been fighting or how many had already been sent, but it seemed like it was all hands on deck here. There were even a few that didn't look like soldiers, not that they didn't carry themselves like they could hold a weapon, but clearly different attire. The leader didn't even bat an eye as I followed. I guess they were quite desperate here. Follow me, we're there to grab the wounded and provide relief. That means arrows on the flying lizard and potions to the main fighters. Don't crowd around the companions, let them do their job. Hell, there wasn't even a loose formation, we were practically sprinting towards the west. I saw the watchtower in the distance. I cast a reinforcement on my eyes to get a better view. I could see someone at the top of a half-demolished tower jump off onto the dragon as it shouted. Fusrodah, the dragon bellowed loud enough to be heard this far away, blowing apart the remains of the large stone structure. Thoram. I shouted in disbelief, seeing the familiar figure of my friend having the brilliant idea to try and mount the goddamn dragon. Divines, that man is crazy. A man next to me shouted. He's a fearless one. Which companion was that? Maybe he can hurt the thing from on top. The dragon took to the skies, practically piercing the clouds, spinning and flipping. It didn't take long for Thoram to lose his grip and fall, and it was a long way down, so much so that he was barely even a dot with my reinforced eyes. I saw a few of the guards look away, not wanting to watch. I tensed up. Was this shock? For a brief moment my body wouldn't even respond. Wait, why was I even hesitating? Who cares if people know I'm a half-devil? Why was I even hiding this aspect of myself? Because I was embarrassed. Because I didn't like their origin. Who the fuck cares about any of that crap? I actually have people I care about now. My wings exploded out from behind me. My body reinforced, and I didn't stop there. Boost, me and Drake roared as the gauntlet appeared on my hand. I pushed off the ground and the air around me distorted, pushing the guards next to me away. Fast, that was all I could think about. Faster. I saw his body falling, helpless, flailing in the air. Faster. Boost. I had no time to even consider the second boost as a boom erupted behind my back, accelerating to a speed unprecedented. You damn idiot, I yelled, catching Thoram only a few dozen feet off the ground, my momentum all disjointed as I crashed with him in my grasp. The dirt kicked up, stone and rubble burst out from our landing as I took the brunt of it. Will. He coughed, blood leaking from his mouth. I felt my wing bend at an angle it wasn't accustomed to as I stood up. The pain was something hard to describe. I don't think I can fly with it like this. No, I definitely can't. Even dismissing my wings was excruciatingly painful. Thoram also stood up, shacking, knees almost buckling under the strain as I shoved a healing potion in his hands. He looked at it, then to me. eyeing my wings before gulping it down. You have wings. He just said dumbly. Yeah. It was all I could say in response, looking away. Is it weird that I have enough self-reflection to realize I'm self-conscious about my wings but can't actively get over it even if I recognize how stupid it is? Fuck, my wings hurt, no time to think about dumb things right now, I'll have a pity party later. He shook his head, wiping some dirt from his eyes. The others, the dragon went up into the clouds. It picks off anyone who tries to run away. We had to keep the wounded here. He pointed towards behind a large piece of rubble where I saw dozens of people sitting, standing, laying as wounds covered their bodies. That wasn't to mention all the corpses I could see and chose not to comment on, they were everywhere. Burned, frozen, impaled, or simply squashed under weight of a several-ton dragon. It's playing around. I could only helplessly admit. The way it destroyed the watchtower, it had the kind of power to do that, there was no reason it would leave these people here like this otherwise. We figured that out already. He grit out. I can, put a shield up around them, how many others can fight? There is no one else. Thoram lowered his head. It only let me last this long because it found me, amusing, in its own words. I've never seen Thoram like this before, it's like all the hope died in his heart. I felt an indescribable rage in my heart, it completely overshadowed the pain I was feeling. How dare this damn dragon harm my friend like this? It dares to touch something of mine. You have me now. I reassured him, gritting my teeth and pushing down my anger. He gave a sad smile. What's the plan? It's probably watching us now, I'll put a shield around the wounded so we can fight it out. I wasn't lying, it was probably watching us, if it was really just playing around, it would probably let us set up for more amusement. I withdrew the staff of Magnus from my ring. Moving to the center of the wounded, I saw their eyes fall on me. I recognized a few guards I had met before, the companions who I had talked with, and even the old man who was close to death had come up. He looked bad, running on fumes here. How many of them were even conscious? How many faces did I recognize that were now missing body parts? My mana swelled and burst out, enough to affect everyone around me. I liked these people, they were good to me. Skyrim, in general, was a place I wouldn't have mind calling home, and now something dares to make a mess here, right in front of me. The runes emerged, dozens, hundreds of them, all floating around as I coalesced the spell. Using the underlying concepts of Greater Ward, applying it in the same manner as a bound field. This mongrel, I'll tear all its scales off one by one. I tried my best to hold back a snarl as my spell came together. My calculations were quick and rough, this spell would not be any masterpiece, but it would be actualized to my needs, I would force it to a suitable level. I was more prone to using finesse, but in this circumstance I'm willing to brute force it. I anchored it with a divine construct. Shield of Asgard. I slammed the staff of Magnus into the ground. The runes shimmered and actualized, forming a translucent shield all around us. The dome giving a rejuvenating effect as a warmth overcame everything inside. The staff was absurd, amplifying the properties of the spell to a whole new level. I don't think I could break this spell without some serious effort and cheating. If it were any other situation, I may have been embarrassed by such sloppy spellcasting. It was quite literally being held up by divine might. There was nothing I could do for now, my repertoire wasn't excellent when it came to defensive spells. I grabbed Thoram and cast the best healing spell I could muster. I saw his pale face visibly get more healthy. Give me your sword. Thoram looked at me in confusion but handed over his steel weapon. It still had my original enchantments on it, but I swept my hand across the flat, casting a reinforcement. This is temporary but should last long enough. It's a lot more durable and sharper now. I tossed it back. This isn't the worst way to die. Thoram chuckled, staring at his weapon. Ha! I let out a long breath. I never did tell you, I got myself a woman, and she's going to kill me when she finds out I picked a fight with a dragon. Thoram snorted in laughter. If we could, I would give you a toast. What's her name? Meridia. I smiled, picturing her face. Is she named after the Daedric Lord? He asked. No. He tilted his head, a look of understanding slowing covering his face. Oh, you did have that job back at Meridia's statue by Solitude, didn't you? Yup. My lips slowly curled up as I knew he put two and two together. I think that deserved 2 drinks at least. He laughed harder. It may be better to die by the dragon's hands then. I couldn't help but chuckle. Well, her angry face is cute, it at least gives me something to look forward to. If there was something that could calm me down, it was the thought of her. It's coming. He suddenly jerked his head up. I blinked, looking up. Thoram somehow detected the dragon before me. The colossal beast of scales and death landed on a large piece of rubble that had been the destroyed tower, opposite of us. Hi Kos Nu. The dragon spoke, looking towards me. Hi smell du dova, Kos hi diazima. Or los nii on dovakian, nide. I stared at the dragon, looking at its body while it wasted time. There were some marks and even some blood draw here and there. It looks like the people here did some work on the beast, but it was still practically unscathed. Must I use this language, then? The dragon once more took my attention. Why do you smell like Dova, little mortal? Because I fucked your mother. I replied without skipping a beat. Truly my days on the internet had not been wasted. Thoram looked at me, absolutely shocked. The dragon looked at me, just as surprised I blurted that out. You mortals, such bravery in the face of death. The dragon finally spoke with a laugh. It is why hunting you is so much fun. Fun? All this is because of fun. I hissed, hearing it actually speak those words made my blood boil. You will beg for death by the time I'm done with you. I growled. Little Notdova, does this make you angry? Then come, battle me, clash your steel against my scales. You didn't need to tell me, I moved as the ground below me burst apart. Grabbing Mirage from my ring. One bird. I shouted, slicing the air in front of me as the sword phantom shot out. What? The dragon shouted in confusion as a few of its scales were torn apart at the impact, drawing blood from the creature who no doubt hadn't expected it. 2 birds. I focused again, swinging my blade as 2 more shot off. Would not kest, the dragon shouted, moving from the ground up into the air high above within the blink of an eye. It dodged with ease as it gained speed and flew around the battlefield. Yal Tur Shul. Its loud voice echoing in my ears, the flames spouted from its mouth and burned towards me. 10 birds. I shouted again, swinging my sword. It was 10 swings overlaid upon one another. No, it should have been so, but only a half-dozen manifested, flying towards the dragon as I clenched my hand as tightly as possible as to not drop my sword. I felt muscles tearing in my arm at the strain, blood vessels rupturing under the surface. Arrogant fucking dumbass. I couldn't help but chastise myself, I hadn't even fully tested this yet. My calculations on the initial creation were bare fucking bones. I was too caught up in my own bullshit and didn't think it through properly. The dragon seemed content on trading, letting its scales get split in several places as it swooped down, avoiding any true damage and bellowed out its flames. I hurriedly grabbed Thoram and moved out of the way, the flame turning the stone to slag as it passed over. Let me see if I can bring him down, wait for a chance. I told him as he nodded and ducked for cover. He didn't have much long range, so he would have to play the role of a last resort. I had a few cards to play if I had someone waiting in the rear. I aimed Mirage at the flying dragon, spell circles spun around my blade. Ether cannon, it was the biggest one I've performed since my memories returned. It was big enough to blow the head off the dragon. Perhaps that's why the dragon realized the danger. Tide Clo Ui. I could feel time distort around the dragon as its wings tucked it and it rolled under my spell, dodging it within a hair's breadth before unfurling its wings again and taking back higher into the skies. I frowned in annoyance, flicking my hand and sending another dozen spells soaring to it, all helplessly splashing against its scales. My runic circles were doing nothing but distracting it for now as lightning shot forth, fire crashed against its body and ice spears tried to impale it, all to no avail. My scowl deepened, I didn't have any more talismans to utilize the creation cycle and bolster something worth a damn, and it was keenly aware of my ether cannon now, something that would most definitely be able to harm it. Damn it, this was one of the worst opponents for the current me. Most my magic does nothing and my ether cannon is useless if I can't hit it, my wings making it so I couldn't take the fight into the air. I had thoughts about perhaps portaling high up then casting something, but that would just leave me susceptible to counterattacks. I briefly thought about grabbing the staff again, but the thought of Thoram losing all his friends made me hesitate. Distort, I quickly cast, allowing a few dozen copies of me to flood out in every direction, giving me a moment of breathing room. Fuck me, I cursed under my breath, because I could swear I saw it smile, as it intentionally went after all the fakes. Motherfucking lizard was playing with me. There is an obvious choice here. Drake finally spoke up. I didn't think you would offer it to me. I reined in my temper. Getting impaired due to my anger would be unwise. I hadn't planned to. Until recently. I pulled out a health potion, drinking it to the last drop. I kept my spell barrage up on the dragon, to at least keep its attention. This would be easier if my wing wasn't crippled for the moment, this health potion not doing much to mend a metaphysical limb. And what changed? I grit out. The way you rushed in to save your friend. Really? I didn't think you cared about such things. Is that why you allowed me a second boost? Were you inspired by the power friendship? I snorted. My body was already aching from that little tidbit, but I was ignoring it for now. It's not like I wasn't hurt in other places worse. I didn't allow it, you did it yourself. I told you before, I forced the boosted gear back into its twice critical status, that meant the normal conditions still applied. Desire and willpower, those are the two aspects that trigger sacred gears. You were acknowledged by the boosted gear, you pushed past the false facade and were able to access MY power. I acknowledge you, Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg. Not because of who you were, but because of who you are now. You are still rough around the edges, but I don't regret being taken by you. Now, there is a path open to you right now, do you wish to take it? I couldn't help but laugh, a smile forming on my face. All it takes is giving up a piece of myself to you, isn't that right? Indeed, that is the condition for using the balance breaker before you can unlock it the normal way, but that isn't much of a detriment for you, now is it? My normal host would need help to expel the draconic power from his body at certain intervals lest he goes wild, but you are not a normal host. I could take Thoram and run, but then the others would die. I could maybe buy time and send them away as well, but then the dragon would attack the town. I didn't consider myself a hero, but I had my own pride. And at this particular moment, I wanted to pull that dragon down from the skies and make it beg for mercy. There was only one option. My heart, take my heart. I said without hesitation. Good choice. As he said that, I screamed in pain. My heart physically changing inside my body. I could only claw at the ground beneath me, my fingers dyed in blood as the skin was ripped at the tips and my eyes almost rolled back from the alteration to my heart. I swung my body wildly, doing anything to keep myself conscious. It seemed like an eternity, yet I doubt even a minute had passed before I finally regained some manner of my self-control. Little whelp, you asked why he smelled like a dragon? Drake spoke outside the boosted gear for the first time as I did my best to regain my senses and control over my body. The dragon paused his assault, gliding overhead and staring down. I am Whiterun Gotch, the Red Dragon Emperor, and he is the one I have chosen as my partner. Show this little whelp our power. I stood up straight, eyes locking with the flying beast who had forced me into this state. We shouted as one. Welsh Dragon, Balance Breaker. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.